Yeah, no. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tabletop Technicians Network stream. Today's topic is defenses in tabletop RPGs. How to design them, what to take into account, and how to try to make them as fun as possible without slowing down the game. With me, as always, Eternal GM.
How's everyone doing?
And yeah, we're live. Excellent. Yeah. Sorry, just some. Okay, yeah. The topic defenses. Sorry, I had a very full day, but no excuses. Focus right into the camera. So defenses. Relatively simple topic, but it can have nuances, right?
Oh yeah. Really depends on, how you're designing certain elements of your system. Like, you have something super simple like the dragon game, which can leave you wanting for a little more complexity. Then you have games that consider even what fighting stance you're in, and that goes too far. That goes directly into the slowing your game down.
But I would say that the dragon game is actually not the simplest it can get. It
No.
can get even simpler. Extremely simple version is like just having one sort of defense, or even simpler that everything hits automatically and damage is just rolled. So it can be even simpler than the dragon game. But technically, the dragon game does have 7 types of defenses that you have to take into account. Armor class and the saving throws, each for one for each stat. But since we're already here, how about we start with our usual point and trash talk the dragon game and why they did a poor job?
Well, I mean, isn't 90% of usage dexterity now? No.
So, yes, how about we start with the armor class in the dragon game and why it is weird and leads to some weird dynamics in the game. Do you want to start?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have plenty to say.
Oh, sure. So I just released a video actually kind of talking about how this works, and it creates a lot of issues. Like, I see a lot of people talk about how they're fine with AC representing your ability to dodge as well as your armor soaking. But when you really get down to it, it doesn't benefit with light armor as much as it does with heavy armor. It kind of breaks it down. Like, no matter how heavy the armor, they're just assuming that means, yeah, we're easier to hit technically, but our AC is still higher because we're soaking more damage. But if you don't have anything that actually considers that, it just kind of leaves it pointless for light armor. There is no real reason to wear a lighter armor and build a dodge better. Like, ultimately, you want to put on the biggest, beefiest armor you can and boost that up. And that's kind of where it comes down to in D&D. I even started working into it, having a slight modulation with a supplement for it in my own games, just to add that extra little bit where, yeah, you have armor soaking and damage soak. That made a big difference on it and allowed us to actually have me be able to put initiative bonus differences. And that's what made it to where it gave the effect of, hey, if you're wearing light armor, you're going to have a higher chance of moving faster than someone with the heavier armor. But it leaves a lot of things that you can't mess with. Like, there's nothing you can do with reactive ability. There's not actually a dodge rating separated from armor rating. And that difference alone makes so much difference. And they, like I said, they've had 50 years and they haven't done it.
Yeah, and it does lead to some weird interactions when you put dodging and deflecting through heavy armor in the same category. For example, when somebody is incapacitated, the armor class does not change. if you're playing the heavy knight, well, duh, his armor doesn't stop working just because he's laying on the ground. But thinking about the rogue who is unconscious on the ground, who mostly relies on dodging, and suddenly it's like he's subconsciously dodging or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always found that a bit weird. But okay, let's be fair. We're not trying to simulate reality to 100% in tabletop RPGs. Otherwise, you get bloated with rules to such a degree that it slows down everything. And that sometimes lead to some weird interactions with the rules that get some funky results.
I don't remember the name of it, but there's this Renaissance group out there that actually gives an award for the most realistic combat mechanics. And I can't remember the game either. And it's because I will never play something that is so complicated that it is considering the stance you're in because of the type of fighting school you went to, the exact shape of the crossguard, the handle and the pommel, and what type of grip you're using to actually dictate, are you going to be able to do this maneuver slightly faster than your opponent on a technique, skill, or stat basis? And I'm like, granted, it is amazing to see someone have spent the time to do that, but nobody wants to spend 30 minutes to figure out if my attack goes faster than yours.
Yeah.
That's way too much.
So that's... yeah.
Oh,
sorry. I thought I interrupted you. So, yeah, when designing defensive, that's something you have to take into account. Don't make it too complicated. But yeah, when it comes you already talked about it, separating dodging into armor, and I think that's a way to make defenses more interesting and also give the dodgers more of an identity. And that also solves the problem that you also talked about, that in the dragon game, you basically want to wear the heaviest armor you can wear. The only downside is disadvantage on stealth checks, but that's it. If you have the stats to wear it and you have the proficiency, you always want to wear it as heavy as possible. Of course, to be fair, that's realistic. Most of the time. Most of the time you want to have the best armor you can get. But it does also limit build variety.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, in my system, where it's less about realism and more about allowing you to have to wear whatever you want. That was an important part to me, make just wearing clothes not necessarily weaker than armor. You can have a very effective clothes build, just as you can have a very effective light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor. And in my system, I have evasion for dodging and armor for damage reduction. So pretty simple split. And that helps you give you the identity. But speaking of armor is a big part of defenses, right?
Uh-huh.
You cannot really talk about defenses without talking the items you're wearing or not wearing. So,
yes.
And when talking about the dragon game, you have the classic 3 categories of armor: light, medium, and heavy, which I think are decent categories. You don't want to overcomplicate stuff. And you have not wearing armor at all, which usually you don't want to do unless you literally don't have armor proficiency. And to be fair, I think that's all the complexity you really need. Of course, you can go way more complicated and having subcategories and so on. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. But, I mean, we don't have to trash talk everything just because the Dragon game did it, right? They did some stuff right.
They did. Just one of the complaints I made in my video is the same with shields and armor in their system is
Mm-hmm.
you take about 5 minutes and you've understood their entire system and you're immediately kind of persuaded to go as big as you can go.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really a draw for wanting to do something else. And like we mentioned how the rogue goes for the light armor, but that's actually one of the very depressing points of what I mean by a limitation of selections. You get the armor you're looking for as a rogue, and you've got one upgrade. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the +1, +2, or +3. If your game master is kind, y'all been playing long enough, yes, there's magic armor that has different enchantments and bonuses to it, but that's what they're left to do is having to add that +1 or add extra abilities to it. Where if you did design something just slightly more complicated, there are so many varieties of options you can do before you're getting to magical and enchantments and anything like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a weak point of the Dragon game. That sub variety. You basically always have the straight upgrade, and usually it's really quickly to act. Like just letter, started letter, that's it. Also, we're talking about fashion, what your character wants to be wearing. What if they don't want to be wearing studded leather, right? That's something in my system where it's just light, medium, and heavy armor. But of course, you can upgrade those, and that's where you get that complexity that where you talked about. What kind of defense do you increase? Do you make the armor lighter so that you can use more of your natural evasiveness? Do you increase the armor itself, making you tanky? Do you give yourself a bonus to defense rolls? Uh, Maybe give something that's not necessarily directly defensive, like camouflage gear and so on. And I try to limit the unneeded complexity with the complexity filter, right? If you want to keep it simple, you got like 4 armor types of upgrades. But if you want to go complex, it's more like I think 30, probably more.
I have been guilty of in early design stages having 10 or 20 tiers of upgradable materials and stuff that are now down to 5. But it you want to almost make that gamified kind of version of like people can keep upgrading their equipment throughout the game in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you want to have load your game down with options, but from the player's perspective, it really can suck if you go, man, we've been playing for 3 sessions, we got 40 more to go, and I already got the max equipment I can get. I better hope the game master gives me a magic item. That's a bad feeling.
Mm-hmm. It takes
But
away
like,
control from the players.
yes, and I wanted to give options, like not that many, like I've mentioned, the materials. Um, but that's, something that can come back later in our podcast.
Yeah, you
I
did
think we're
mention.
specifically talking about armor itself at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What were
Yeah.
you saying?
So in my systems, I try to keep it abstract, right? Heavy armor in a medieval setting is widely different than heavy armor in the sci-fi setting, or even a modern setting, and so on. And same with the materials, since I cannot know in what kind of setting you are. Materials are just materials. There are specific types of materials that, as long as you can justify that they work, yeah, the player can use them, harvest them, and so on from the environment. And it's just measured by the value of the material, which there are rules for how much material can you scavenge from a creature, from what level, what rank, what items they were wearing, and so on. Mm, yeah. But you did mention shields earlier, right? So that's also an interesting
Yes.
form of defense. And
Mhm.
that's something where I think the Dragon game is lacking a bit. Just having a
Yeah.
shield. That's it. Maybe magical shields later on. But let's be honest, half of the fun of choosing your shields is to say, hey, you want a light buckler for parrying and keeping on the move, or just a nice medium sized shield that doesn't slow you down too much, but offers better defense, or you're not the real favorite tower shield, just making
Yeah.
you an immovable monster.
Let's see. In our system, we kind of really took to heart um, the damage soak or dodge rating bonuses to it into consideration. So, like on the lighter armor, it's going to just not impact. Like light armor doesn't impact your dodge rating, where your heavy armor will actually decrease a little bit of your movement and increase your armor rating, which actually does two things in our system. So normally you just have to hit 5 above, and you will now do a point of durability damage and excess effect. So if you have a dodge rating, an armor rating of 2, you now have to hit 7 or higher. So it actually increases the impact of your armor, as well as you're not taking certain damage types. We added the concussive damage. So when you swing a katana against plate mail, it's actually not doing direct damage transfer. It's going to turn into concussive at resisted. So what your goal there would be to actually use more type of weapons that are going to have a better transfer of that. And concussive damage is knocking at your stamina. So this will lead you to being incapacitated, but you're still not having your armor broken. The shields, actually, in our system, if you're, let's just say your AC or to hit number is 10. If you hit right on that number, our system counts it as a glancing shot. So our shields will either add to the soak or the expansion of that glancing shot range, which some classes actually play directly off of. This is similar to the dodge rating, having if you miss it by far enough, you're actually opening up to a counter attack from a martial. The cool thing about this is like the subclass of martialist is a boxer. And so it can use a combination of footwork and bob and weave and actually expand that critical counterattack range by spending extra stamina. So this will make it to where he's harder to hit, and he'll dodge your hit and come under your shot and hit you. Because if he dodges and gets this right, you can have an ability trigger to counterattack. So by having the counterattack dodge rating area, you have the glancing shot and expanded effect. This allows for armor to play around with that in all of its aspects. And this is definitely a couple more steps than normal systems take. But so far, I will say in a year of playtesting, this has not affected the speed of combat in a negative way. And in fact, it's unnoticed when we're going 3 times as fast as the Dragon game. That's really the only problem with my system is I keep running out of everything I'm planning for the system. And I'm just like, all right, so what do y'all want to actually go do next? So I can think about this for a moment. Let me run to the restroom because I have no plans yet. Like, that's a reality with this. So I'm very proud of what we did because it doesn't impact the speed of battle. It really adds some subtle levels of complexity that allow it to work within your character creation builds to actually mean that you can boost your abilities of your features with your equipment. And that's something that definitely we wanted to improve upon from the Pathfinder and Dragon game style systems.
Which you did mention reacting to an attack, which the box build did sound kind of cool. Which is also something, active defense, which I think is a very fun mechanic. If you can build a way how a player can react to an incoming attack. My system has many reaction abilities and other features that you can get that allow you to use reactions defensively. The classic tree duo is parry to get an evasion boost to make it miss you entirely, or resist, where you just tank it. Then there's a more magical version, barrier, which you can also use on allies, where you get an armor boost, and so on. But of course, offensive reaction, right? You hit me, I hit you back. Counters, or and so on. I have a whole
Yeah,
sub
and
archetype built around counters. The more you attack him, the more powerful he gets. He can get really scary.
fair enough. We didn't actually have things that were like not necessarily feats, like your system names them different, but not really like little abilities you could pick and put on your system. It's more built into the grouping system. So this does favor martials because they're having quicker reaction and ability in physical combat. But each class has access to reactions. So we have neutral ones like trip or slide, grab. We also have things that are specific to each grouping. But the cool point about this is there's several actions an opponent or you can do on the field that can allow for someone else to do a reaction. This isn't just focused, as we've mentioned before about my system, with the reaction attacks. Being the archer, you don't want to run across the field and because they can just reaction strike hit you. Let's say you're running at me. I can actually prep to, okay, reaction strike because you're coming in. Simulates that cinematic, both people come at each other and clash and go at try and hit each other. But we also have the, oh shit, they're moving forward. I'm going to back around this corner. Because you can use your reaction for a certain amount of speed, movement speed, and push your, with stamina to go extra time. You will dig into your next turn of time, but you can put yourself in a completely more defensible position, even move back and now be able to flank this target, which will cause them to have to actually use strategy and tactics in order to not just walk into kind of a murder hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking about, is there anything else I want to say about reactive defensives or shields or armor? Otherwise, we could move on to the next topic. You have, of course, the classic armor class. You roll to attack and see if you hit the target. But there's also the version that's works the other way around. You automatically target the creature and they have to actively defend against it. In the dragon game is saving throws. In my system it's called defense rolls. Do you have something like that in your system?
In my system, it really comes down to like the interaction of how I was describing the hit roll kind of variability ranging from the counter attack to expanded effect. That's where a lot of that kind of comes in on that. But I will say, for an example, the D12 success roll system, that is what got put on the back burner because of the D20 core system. Whenever I attack you, I am going to be doing something like melee and accuracy. So that's what's creating my dice pool. But for my opponent, this could be reaction dodge or reaction block. And you're actually going to have a dice total that compares to each other. And so it's very active defense. Certain abilities will play into that. But just at base, it's you have to, as offense, not match, but actually beat their defensive total.
Sorry?
Oh, once it gets high enough, that's where the auto success system goes in of trading 2 for 1. So like, let's say you're a level 20 in that system and you're fighting a level 3 or 4 character. You can probably just half your total potential successes and it be over the max that they can which means you automatically will succeed in that dodging or attack maneuver. So that's definitely another way you can handle that interaction with the active defense style instead of just the static.
That reminds me of the Black Eye, which has a similar system that when you attack somebody, the other one makes a parry roll. But what's interesting about that, I don't know if it's in your system, then you can only parry one attack. So if you're getting attacked by two people, well, you can only defend against one attack, and the other one's just coming from behind. So, but as far as I know, the Black Eye is also a bit more punishing. I get more realistic combat in the sense of, yeah, you're not a powerhouse. Try some social interactions to solve your problems for once.
True. No, it's been a minute since I've looked through the document of it, but yeah, effectively you would be able to go after multiple and dodge and react to multiple attacks, but it did have a limit. It was connected to the D12 system style of the reaction system compared to the one in this system. Mm-hmm. It's basically meant, depending on your build, like mages and psionics had less ability attacks they could end up dodging, less reactions per turn, where martials had the most.
Yeah, I think it's important to have the power fantasy of the front line who is surrounded, and he sees you just see dead men, and you're just being able to withstand the horde, at least as long as they're not too over leveled compared to you. So
true.
I think it's if you at least want a bit of power fantasy, it's good to allow to defend against multiple attacks, at least for tank characters. In my system, stuff like resistant parry only costs 1 reaction point, and you have 2, so you can use it against multiple attackers, but it does have its limits. You can get features that boost your the amount of reaction points you have, but yeah, I don't think I should go too much into detail. But back to the active defenses like saving throws. What I like about that system is that you can aim for weak points in the enemy, right? You're fighting against a big dumb ogre. Well, his intelligence saving throw will probably be very bad, but his strength saving throw and constitution saving throw will be extremely strong. So instead of trying to grab him down, how about using some illusion magic or taunting or something like that? Of course, again, the dragon game is not very good at that because, bless you.
Thank you.
Because of the problem that they decided to focus on 3 of the 6 stats to concentrate most of the saving throws: dexterity, wisdom, and constitution, which really limits your options. You rarely find anything against strength, intelligence, and charisma. They do exist, but are far rarer. And that limits that weakness sniping, because you have less choices, and it's more likely that a creature will be resistant against the few choices you have, and so on.
See, in our system, we have us in our version of saving throws, but they're stat checks. So you will never actually use a stat for a check roll unless it's something that's intense, like a saving throw. Most of our defensive things where you can do that sniping of weakness comes from the fortitudes. Depending on what type of build you're doing, you're actually increasing your own type of fortitude. So you probably don't want to try and target your physical characters with things that will affect physical fortitude or the spiritual or mental fortitude. These will tend to be the options you want to go, because your big bad boy fighter is probably not going to have a lot of mental and physical fortitude, because that's going to be more towards our technicians, mages, and psionics.
Well, what I also wanted to add with those active defenses, it's a good thing when you're making area of effect and stuff. Because now you don't have to roll an attack roll for every single target. If the GM is targeting the players, each of them makes the roll individually, streamlining the process. And if the player targets an enemy group of the GM, he can just take multiple dice and roll them all at once. So that does streamline that aspect a bit. Unless you want to say area of effect is auto hit. What I guess makes sense to a certain degree, but I don't like it. I want to give you a chance to defend against the fireball that explodes in your face.
Fair enough.
Well, yeah, speaking about the whole targeting weaknesses, that was something very important for my system, where almost every stat is equally common. There's an exception, Constitution and Will. They are more common, but that's to balance out that the stat itself doesn't give you that strong of a benefit compared to the other stats. But the others would still come up, and a smart player will know to have like at least 3 different defense rolls to target. And I see inexperienced player just not taking a look at it and then targeting a giant with a Constitution defense roll, and I'm like, okay, yeah, he succeeded. What did you think? But I like it when my smart players figure it out and say, oh, giant, so let's try intelligence, and so on. There's even a lesser talent in my system that allows you to change defense rolls, and that's specifically designed for those who want to aim for weak spots. And usually the most experienced players always take it. Yeah.
So you're saying they're changing their defense roll or making the opponent use a different defense roll?
Make the enemy use a different defense roll. Changing your own defense roll is too strong.
Okay.
That's that takes away of the whole, yes, I want to aim for the weak spot system. Plus, now you only have to invest in one defense roll if you can switch all of them into one defense roll. And since you can make a singular defense roll really high in my system, that just makes you basically succeed on every single defense roll, which I do not want you to be able to.
Fair enough.
So, unless you're maybe a level 12 Sentinel, the sub-archetype that specifically specializes in defense rolls. Yeah, the tier 5 feature is to get just +5 to all defense rolls, which is a huge bonus. But yeah, I mean, they're the ones that specifically specialize in that.
I'd actually like to hear like what your system does with the more strategy and tactics, like flanking or linking shields together, for the offense defense version of teamwork, even in assisting actions. Because like you mentioned Sentinel, well, we're going to have some subclass designs that give features of using a reaction on your own turn, which is not normally how they're used. They come up like if you're coming at me and I attack in response, yes, but mainly they're out of your turn mechanic. But if I have an opponent coming at my ally and I'm like the Sentinel, that's my job. I should be able to have something that does that. So how does your system work with that?
Well, per default, the only real cooperative move you have is the cooperative cinematic action, which, to be fair, is by far the strongest move in the entire game.
Fair enough.
That's similar like to a cinematic action. You spend narrative momentum to decide to do something cool, but you do it together. You have the one who initiates this, which uses an action, and all the other allies use a reaction. And the power scales with each player that contributes, so you can be really strong. That's something that was important to me, making cooperative moves at least slightly stronger than selfish moves. But okay, that's the only thing you have by default. But there are many features. Sorry. That allow you to help your allies. Speaking about defenses, I mentioned barrier earlier, where you can increase the armor of an ally as a reaction. It's not as strong. Oh wait, no. Sorry, never mind. But there are also features. The protector, for example, is a classic tank who can actively throw himself into the path of an attack and tanking attacks. There is the leader who can buff their allies, who is pretty strong with that. There are many different abilities. Of course, there are simplest things like just healing your allies, or there's ally attack, where you can allow an ally to attack on your turn. They're just a lot of options, but I have to admit, most of them you have to get. Take a feature that allows you to do that. But I do really want to reward that, making those features surprisingly strong.
Okay.
But talking about sorry, tiredness is slowing me down.
It's fine.
How about your system?
Well, like I'd mentioned how we wanted to diversify shields, and I'd mentioned the linking up thing. Not all shields can link up, but once you get to the things, the type of shields you'd see, like a city guard step into a shield wall, those shields actually have the feature to link up, and this will actually increase your armor soak and effectively your dodge rating in effect, because you're overall going to be harder to hit because you're working as a group. Where we also have that concept of flanking is directly just built into our system, because we are focused a lot on the actual battle map description of how combat can flow. So when it comes to the assisting type actions, they're all going to work off of being a reaction or using time up effectively from your next turn. This allows you to kind of juggle your resources from this turn and push into the next to defend your ally in that really important moment. But you're sacrificing what you can do next turn, which makes sense because you've given that time up already. Our inspiration system is what we would go for how it works with that kind of cinematic moment. In the playtest document, it describes team combo moves as basically you have the first person that initiates it. Everyone else pays a similar initiative cost, which is set by the amount of people taking. This is built in for this to be a moment for the game master and the players to all figure out what is about to happen. And this is those like really huge scenes you see in a combat situation in a movie where everyone acts all at once doing completely separate things to basically be pieces of the puzzle, which could end up having the orc run out to gain everyone's attention while one character shoots an arrow that's got a alchemy created item on it, and then the fire mage hits that at the same time of impact, causing all of this stuff to crash down and either trap or crush the enemy. This allows for that being something that, I'm going to want to give this a major effect. Y'all all just paid the actual regular base cost of y'all's actions, but also a bit of inspiration points to be able to do this. So it's a really hefty pay, so really impressive result.
The only real way to accomplish something like that is with a cinematic reaction in my system. But of course, there are team options. Speaking about taking the focus onto you, the taunting ability. Also, with your whole marching as one, you've gave me an inspiration for a new sub-archetype, which
I'm glad.
I didn't not necessarily want to, because I was like, okay, I've got the 140 for now. and now, and I thought I would not have any ideas anytime soon. And now, how about a Legionnaire sub archetype, who's all about strengthening their allies and becoming more stronger? The more of them are just moving around as one. But
That'd be legit.
mm-hmm. That would be kind of cool. Come on, I thought I had a break with the sub I mean, I still need a good idea for all the other sub archetypes, since I still have the rule of just one, like the same amount of sub archetypes for each archetype. Something I disliked about the Dragon game, that certain classes had way more subclasses than the others. See, Cleric and Wizard versus Ranger or Barbarian.
I mean, wizard versus any spellcaster. Technically, it's the like, you know, you got that shelf or drawer that it's the catch-all. Well, the wizard's the catch-all for magic. Like, no matter what magic you come up with, just give it to the wizard. Like that seems to be their design philosophy.
Mm-hmm. All right. Defenses. What else can we talk about? Like I said at the beginning, it's a rather simple topic, so I was afraid that we might not be able to fill up the whole hour.
Yeah, well, let's touch on durability. Not a lot of systems actually have a durability system. A lot of them that where you find durability, it's mainly in video games. And when you look at having like 120 points of durability, it's like, geez, that's insane. Let's not bring that into tabletop. We figured out just a 3-point method. Like if I crit on my to hit roll, I'm doing a point of durability damage to you. If I roll a nat 1 on my attack, my weapon just took a point of durability damage. And it's not complicated. You can repair your weapon with a travel kit. 30 minutes per point of damage. If it's broken, you got to bring it in. You got to go to town and actually have a complete smithing station. And as our materials go up in tier, you're gaining durability points. And just that simple 30 minutes of in-game time per point actually scales with the harder materials. Now, that adds a whole element to combat because, like I said, you got your big, beefy tank guy that, like in our system, is not moving a lot of distance per turn, but also has the max amount of soak and extremely wide glancing shot range, which makes the guy that has the big tower shield and the spear kind of actually dangerous to attack. If you can't guarantee being able to reliably hit above that, it's going to be very punishing. So what would be the goal? How do you kill this thing if that is the goal? Because he can't be knocked incapacitated for whatever reason. You're going to break their armor. And once their armor's broken, they have all negatives of the armor, but none of the positives. So now they're still moving as slow. They're still having like a lot of their dodge rating dropped. But at the same time, their glancing shot range is 1 point now because their armor's broken. There's no expanded. There's no damage soak. And now there's no concussive damage transfer. You're just straight stabbing into them or slicing them. So having durability in a simple method like that allows you to expand what you can do to punish weapons for like natural armor or plate mail, and how to deal with plate mail in more than just one way. You know, it's different. You're going to go at a light armor or non-armored character completely different in combat. If you're being smart, you know, get good in our system kind of thing, than you would to a heavy armor. And medium really kind of depends on which one you're better at. It kind of sits midway, so it's a little bit of heavy, a little bit of light. So you can kind of do both. But heavy really requires you to want to break that armor or pummel them into submission on the ground because they have no stamina and they're now incapacitated as a condition. Mm-hmm. So I thought durability, if kept simple, can really add just something to a system that's not normally found in tabletop.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You have to keep it simple. I think most players won't want to track it. It's again, you're aiming for realism, And again, motivating somebody to have multiple types of weapons with them, right?
Mm.
So, which is realistic. The reason why you have the backup knife is in case your sword breaks. Okay, not just that. The knife also in medieval combat could be a good knight finisher when he was on the ground and you just take out the dagger and right into the eye slit. But yeah, that reminds me of it was a strategy game. I don't remember which one, but it was Wild West themed. And I think it was the Mexican campaign that the narrator talked about. I was shooting with a musket until it broke down. Then I drew my sword and continued fighting. And when that broke off, I drew my knife and continued fighting. I always have to think of that scene when thinking about, yes, it is realistic, and that's why they had backup weapons.
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely why we stuck to 3 points. 3 points is really not that difficult to have to track. So it's like, yeah, we wanted you to be a little more paying attention to it, but it's just such a small thing. Like, how often is a crit, either 20 or 1, happening? Like, these are the opposite things. It's not happening all the time, but it's present, and it's right on your character profile to just be able to mark one and fill in one circle. If we went any more complicated than that, I would have been the main person telling everyone else working on it, no. But something simple like that, I mean, max of 5 or 6 points of durability for the max material, which is palladite. I think the most complicated thing we get into technically with durability is if I have palladite armor and you have steel, you're not hurting me. And if I have palladite weapon and you have steel armor, your armor is non-existent in reference mechanically to my attack. So by having higher materials, also durability, you're able to play around with that to where it doesn't actually come up a lot. But when it does, it all of a sudden puts that tension on you of like, oh crap, if my weapon breaks in combat, I might be screwed. Well, all right. Sorry, I don't like the idea of you wearing and having a sword for 5 years and never having to sharpen it or repair it. Like, there's a level of realism I want. Too much, go fight and sword fight in real life. And there's enough of the, hey, let's just be simple. But going beyond that for me seems to take away from certain elements. We tried to find that sweet spot between adding a little complexity while making it not actually dominate the gameplay. Because the durability system can.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you talk a lot about plate armor and breaking that. How do you handle natural armor? Like an insect monster and so on.
Exactly the same way. It's effectively treated as armor. It's going to increase the glancing shot range. It's going to have effectively durability, because the scariest thing about fighting a dragon is its scales are really tough and you're actually not damaging it with its attacks. You break its armor in that area. Now it turns to the other flank.
Sorry, Keijo just wrote something in the chat. Hey guys, we have 2 sets of HP in our game, an overall score and a critical score. Punching and blunt generally take down your overall HP, where blades or piercing for its they take from the crit. Interesting. And which is why we have a lot of martial artists.
Fair enough. I'd say that's very similar to how White Wolf Publishing handled it. I don't remember their second damage type, but they had 2 different damage types. And one was like, okay, so you're a vampire. If I punch or shoot you, it's the less bad type of damage. But if I'm actually using a magical attack or fire or something like that, it's doing this different type of damage, which is way more serious to accumulate. I kind of avoided that with how we handled the different damage types. It's not that it's a bad idea. It's just that I had kind of designed my way out of that being possible to be a smart idea in my system, where in things like Vampire the Masquerade, it's ultimately important that you have those two different types of damage you can take. So I would say it's really dependent.
For Vampire the Masquerade is specifically important because they want to simulate the vampireness, right? I haven't played the tabletop RPG, but I have played the video game Vampire Bloodlines Masquerade, where that also works. But Keijo, or Kaijo, or however you pronounce it, so how do you balance it? What is actually the difference between crit HP and normal HP? Do you have like less crit HP, making it more like critical, that you don't get that reduced? And if so, do your swords hit less? How do you balance that? And yeah, now now there's the delay. First they have to hear it, then they have to write down their answer. So until we get an answer, it might take a while.
Well, that's fun.
No.
While
we could
they're
continue
doing
talking
that,
about natural defenses until then. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no problem. We should pay attention to who's ever communicating with us in the chat. No, I really wanted it to be similar to how we handle armor. So like on our encounter profiles, it literally says armor/natural armor and weapons. Well, combat gear / natural armor and weapons. And that's because I didn't want them to defer for the game master. I'm already asking the game master in our system to worry about things other games don't. So I really tried to diminish that in there. So it does the same exact stuff. You can have a bonus to your armor rating. It can decrease this creature's overall dodge rating, but that would just be how it's designed, not necessarily an effect of the armor. It has durability because any type of natural armor in the world can be cracked. It can be damaged to where it's not actually doing its job anymore. So that's the same thing as durability. But for natural armor, there is no base standard of 3. It might have 1 point. And so all you have to do is get a hard enough hit on it, and now their armor is cracked. It would allow for regular damage types to be able to damage them as compared to others. So it's built to be the exact same as armor for the sake of the game master.
And but does it have like a regenerative property that after the rest it stitches up again or something?
If you happen to actually let the creature go and it goes away for long enough, it can come back with that fully repaired.
Okay. In my system, I also have natural armor. It's handled with a talent. They are technically 4 talents. 3 lesser talents and 1 greater talent, which gives you all the 3 lesser talents. Natural armor, natural weapons, and natural ability. Sorry, Kaiju Ender. So unarmed combat has its own critical hit fulfill different results against armor, but it means there's only certain damage which is the heart is blocking it. Is more likely to seriously harm or kill. I hate that emoji symbol right in the right of the chat, which always blocks like a word or two. It's so annoying. I want to be streaming here, not reading, deciphering hieroglyphics. And you recover basic HP quicker. Interesting. Okay. There's certainly one race which is more likely to seriously harm or kill. Oh. But I mean, if you have a blunt weapon, if I hit somebody long enough with a blunt weapon, they'll die anyway. But do we have like stages where just having basic HP reduced first just makes you unconscious, and if you lose more of it, you die, Keijo? Or against the delay. I had it right because it's a stream. We got to keep the people entertained, so we cannot just go silent and wait for the answer.
This is true. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I still say that probably out of all different damage types just built into the like profile, gotta say White Wolf Publishing really kind of did it justice. There there's no amount of this basic damage that's going to add to the other. But certain things can increase your damage of one and add to the other, where some types of damage only purely affect the more dangerous damage type. And if you completely fill up that bar of it in vampire, you're done. There's some cases where you will have to do, I think it was a Rorschach check. And if you fail, you're basically about to go mad a little because the beast within you has taken over. There was a whole lot of things you can do with that and the different damage types due to that.
Keijo gave us an answer. Yes, blunt damage eventually goes into the critical damage and can kill, which I think is an elegant solution instead of having one complicated basic HP, just going over to critical HP and only critical HP being able to kill. That's an elegant solution for that design. Which game specifically do you design? I'm afraid that maybe I don't. You're in the Discord group, or I know you from Twitter or so, and I cannot recognize you. Or do I know? Sorry, I'm also pretty bad with names. I mostly identified people in Discord and so by their picture, and less by the name. It's like, I had a picture, I recognize that, and then. But yeah, homebrew. Oh, so it's homebrew for, I presume, the Dragon game. DD. D20 Music, hi. I had my suspicions because I saw you retweet the stream tweet, but I thought D20 Music makes music, not. I thought we were talking about your own tabletop RPG. But yeah, homebrew, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know D20 Music?
No, I've not met them yet.
They make tabletop RPG music. Most of the music I use for my streams is from them. I actually paid them for some of the music, so it's yeah. If you ever need music for your streams or so, it's a great option. Or in private games, it's I can recommend. D20 Music. For anybody else watching, you probably just have to search it in YouTube, D20 Music, and you can find them. Yeah.
Probably something we're gonna look into, just because like even my like random content I'm making about stuff, yeah, it's just my shelf of nerd stuff in the back and not much else, you know. It's all silent except for me speaking, and I know that's one of the things I will improve over time. But no, I don't have any access to music. I play guitar, but I can't just come up with my own music all the time. I'm not that good at it.
Let's make a music stream. How about we stay in our lane and let the professionals handle the music? Speaking of the professional, seems like you've got a new follower, Eternal GM.
Oh, well, thank you.
And also, apparently, he's homebrewing Dragon Warriors, a very old tabletop RPG. Never heard of it, but have you heard of it, Eternal?
No, it makes me think of certain other things, but I feel like it's one of the ones this guy, when I was first realizing tabletops were not my invention. If you haven't remember that story, I think it was on that shelf. I don't remember much about it because I did look through like 30 or 40 of them, but it sounds slightly familiar, like from that time period. Dragon Warriors. Like, sorry, to me that immediately pops up like Dragon Slayers from Fairy Tale or Dragon Warrior Monsters, the predecessor to Pokemon.
Yeah, Fairy Tale. But yeah, the topic defenses. Just wanted to finish talking about natural armor. Uh,
Mhm.
like each of the lesser talents gives you another version of natural, and just in like your system, it's handled identically. Just that natural items you don't have to upgrade them; they upgrade automatically when you level up, and also you cannot be disarmed, which makes them pretty practical and money savers. Taking that, and of course, there's a greater talent, natural armory, which gives you all three, which
Hmm.
is a bit cost efficient. But I wanted to separate it because sometimes you just have like really hard skin, but you're still wielding a sword, right? And so on. It's a Dave Morris tabletop RPG from the 80s. So very old school.
Yes.
Hmm. So, uh,
That puts it around as old as the Dragon game.
yeah. So maybe you can send us some links later or something, because now I'm curious.
My biggest question was, how soon before or after did it hit compared to D&D? Because that would be very interesting to know, because Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, they were originally working with Chainmail, and then Dave Arneson was the Greymore campaign. And in combination of certain of those elements is what became the first edition of D&D.
Mhm.
So to know where in that history Dragon Warriors pops up would be pretty cool. And maybe we come up with a different name than the Dragon game to refer to D&D. Now there's 2 Dragon games.
I mean, there are always more dragon games. Dragons are very popular for a reason.
This is true. You would think D&D would have more of them.
It's kind of, yeah, many have already made the jokes that modern Dungeons and Dragons has surprising little dragons and dungeons, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, it's close to D&D time. Yes, what was a rival back in the day, but mostly in the UK. So
Okay.
you have those. Yeah, back in the day, before globalization, pretty much every region had their own game. The Black Eye was the one for Germany. Most people that I know that played in the past actually played the Black Eye and not Dungeons and Dragons. But nowadays, even D&D's even pushing out those classic local rivals out of the market, which is
Oh,
sad.
yeah. I remember seeing, I think it's been a year, maybe a little more, but the Japan commercial. And I immediately went, oh, D&D is about to take over Japan. The cosplayers are going to love this.
Yeah, Japan has an interesting history with tabletop RPGs, which you can really see in their fantasy anime and how D&D inspired they are, but they also made their own stuff. I don't know all the details, but it's interesting to see how it evolves separately from the same roots from the West. The system is more attack versus defense or speed versus evasion, etc. D20 games where rolling 1 is a crit and 20 is a dodge.
Hmm.
All right. So, we managed to fill the hour. Thank you, D20, for giving us a bit of steam at the end. It's always nice
Yes.
to have active people in chat.
Oh, yeah. Because like me and Blaze could talk for the whole hour. We will figure something out. I can always dig into another part of my system or a specific class or something that goes into what we're talking about. But having the community engage actually like not only helps the stream, but allows us to be able to interact with y'all, talk
Mm.
about new stuff, and maybe even cause new topics or find new guests for the show, which is always cool.
Mm.
It's always better to have it to where we can interact with you. Sadly, I can't see you type because I'm poor and only have this crap on my phone. So he's like,
Yeah. So,
someone's texting. I'm like,
so it's important that I read everything to you. So he just also wrote, "I like to get you going." Smiley face.
ooh. No.
Don't. I'm not going to claim that I'm a saint and I did not think of the same thing, but and I think, especially with the smiley face, that he might have been whatever.
Hey, look, there's a reason that wisdom and intelligence is only two parts of the mental aspects of a character. Wit needs to be a stat. I will die on that hill. People are like, how do you have 12 stats and properties for each one? I don't know. I'm actually confused on how nobody has ever brought up in playtesting that it makes the game harder. It actually makes it more intuitive because you're separating stuff. In wit is so a mental stat. That quick ability just to respond to someone's statement, like the moment you're like, would you said that and I responded to it? That's wit. That's not intelligence. Intelligence is figuring out how you can respond, and wisdom is remembering and knowing how you can. Wit is the ability to do it quickly.
He just wrote, "It wasn't a winky smiley face, winky smiley face."
Fair enough.
So, but
Well,
how about we wrap it up? Do you want to add something?
I was just going to say as a real quick side note, it's for people like him that I added seduction as an actual skill. Social skill, but yes.
Yeah, that's usually handled with grace in my system. Yes, skills. That's something we might be able to talk next week about, and or stats and how to separate it all. But
I
we'll talk
wouldn't.
about that later if that's going to be the next topic. I don't just want to decide that. So, then let's go with some final announcements. For me, big now. I have a Ko-fi account now with 4 different tiers. If you want to support Ishanekon, I guess I'm a natural bardlo. That's just what wrote 20 Keijo just wrote. So, cheers, guys.
It is
Have a good
hard.
Sunday. Thank you, you too. But back to the announcements.
Yes.
Yes, Ko-fi account, 4 tiers if you want to support Ishanekon World Shapers. As always, I want to say firm that everything will be free, but if you want to help me with that vision, help me, for example, a bit paying my artist, there are tiers, there are small perks. For example, the right to ask for creatures to be added if you need them for your own games. Higher tiers even include getting some one shots or even be part of a campaign that I run. So happy for every little euro you can send my way. Yeah, that's all announcements from my side. How about you, Eternal?
From mine, I have gotten to the point of releasing weekly. I'll just go ahead and throw out the little title: D&D Failed Shorts. How the D20 core system handles those things, as well as various nerdy content surrounding Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and Doctor Who. Anime stuff I've been asked from a subscriber to Chuck and talking to. But most importantly, early access of the playtest document is now available for anybody online to go ahead and take a look. We will be continuing to add the combat gear, basic encounters, and eventually the Old West Train Heist module for the first round of the playtest. I will update later when we have added each component to it, but right now anyone can go in the self-promotion section in this server and the T3N network Discord and be able to find that document. So anyone that goes checks it out, please let me know what you think. We got 10 different platforms you can come communicate with me on about it, and you are also welcome to start putting in requests to set up a new playtesting table.
Mm-hmm. And also, which I just remind, this month we will have another GM stays off. This time it will be my system, Ishanekon World Shapers, Underwater Aquatic Adventure. Eternal will also be a player this time, run by Nick Monroe Turner, creator of the Rogue Octopus, which we played last time. It will be Sunday, the 24th of March, same time as usually our stream here. I'm sure it will be super fun. And also in the Saturday 16th, same time, I will have the next Ishanekon Arena. This time, elemental themed. If anybody wants to join, it's open invite. Anybody can join. So yeah, now I think I'm done. So thank you for everybody who joined, especially D20 Music. Check them out.
Yeah.
They have some great music. And yeah. See you, everybody. Till next week.
See y'all later.
Bye.